Okay, this is Rudolph Fry's genre study. I have chosen a mystery genre partly because I love all the books that I've read that have to deal with the mystery unit, and partly because there's just so many different books in this genre that I find it easy for students to get engaged in. First, I'm going to tell you what a mystery genre is. It's a subgenre of course, fiction, and normally it's a subgenre of a narrative fiction, and it's normally through a detective story. Normally you have some type of detective, whether it be a kid or an adult, who has to solve some type of crime going through clues. Now, mysteries are not always detective based. I think what makes a good mystery is that there is some type of suspenseful mystery going on, and we're trying to figure it out through the clues that the author keeps giving us. I think some of the hardest parts are when you get away from the detective part, you get to where you have to infer more, and students have trouble inferring, which is why I like doing a mystery unit, because I think students need to be able to infer different information from anything, whether it be from social studies, science, or in just reading for pleasure. They need to be able to infer. And then also, the biggest thing I think for any book is it has to have some element of suspense. And in mystery books, you have to have that suspense element. You want to find out what happens next. And the author can do this through using the foreshadowing skills, or they can try to trick us by giving us what the literary element is called the red herring. And it kind of tries to distract you, it tries to make you not believe what's going to happen. It just kind of takes you in a different direction of what you were thinking. A few books that I think would be good in a mystery unit for mainly upper elementary students, because that's what grade I teach, would be From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweller, Three Times Lucky, which we just finished reading, Powerless, Found, When You Reach Me, The Graveyard Book, which I did my book talk on, Theodore Boone, Holes, and the 39 Clues series. Now, that's a lot of books that fall in this genre, and I think they give you a diverse settings for different classes. Some might be interested in science fiction, some might be interested in historical fiction, and I think this gives you a good diverse group. You've got Mrs. Basil E. Frankweller, which is set back in the past. You've got Found, which has got scientific futury feel. You've got Powerless, which is just a complete fiction book. You've got Three Times Lucky, which I feel could be a realistic fiction type book. You've got Holes. You've got the Graveyard Book. You just have so many different books, and then the 39 Clues book, which is a great series to build off of. Now, I'm going to do a read aloud on the 39 Clues, but I'm not going to read it right now. I'm going to read it at the end of my presentation so it doesn't take up too much time. But I think the 39 Clues is great because you could go on book after book if the students are just loving it. And they give you little secret messages at the bottom of the book, and it helps get students engaged in the books. Just a quick 2-3 sentence summary on each book. Three Times Lucky, we read it with the mystery of who killed the person. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. And then who kidnaps Miss Lana, so you've got that type of mystery. Powerless, you've got a mystery of kids gain superpowers, and for some reason when they turn 13 they lose their powers, and Daniel, who comes to town, he figures himself one of these famous detective types, and he loves Sherlock Holmes, and he's trying to figure out how to solve the mystery of why they start losing their powers at age 13. You got Found, where they start getting these mysterious letters saying you are the one of the missing, and immediately from that moment on, the students are engaged in the fact that at the very beginning of the book, it's a plane full of like 36 babies just shows up out of nowhere, and then the plane disappears. You've got When You Reach Me, which we read, where you trying to figure out who's giving the mysterious notes. So, and then you've got Theodore Boone, which I think would be great as well, as showing a detective. The kid is 13, and he's sitting there trying to solve the Duffy murder, about a guy who supposedly murdered his wife for insurance money, but nobody can prove it, and you've got this 13-year-old boy who is trying to prove it. You could use any of these books as like a whole group read, or you could divide up your class into small groups and do book groups where each group is responsible for reading one of these books in the genre, then reporting back to the class about why this fits the mystery genre, and they're keeping like a notebook journal, and you can use it to the notebook journal to kind of correlate to how a detective would keep his notes, and that the students have to keep making notes as they go along and what they think is important as clues, just like a real detective. And you could tie it into how detectives solve crimes, so that could be one extension that you could do. You could kind of go research how detectives solve crimes. You could possibly, if you know somebody or if you're willing to email or call people, you could try to get a detective to come in and discuss how they solve crimes and what kind of clues people look for. Another extension that you could do is you could have them write their own mystery unit story. And I think that's a wonderful thing to tie writing into reading, where the students, maybe in groups of 3 or 4, create their own mystery, or you could do it on their own if you have enough time to give them so they can write their own story. To help tie technology in, I had found a website that is kids.mysterynet.com, where you could have your students go online and they can play different types of games where they've got to solve clues. They can read a little different mystery clips. There's some magic tricks on there, because trying to solve a magic trick is kind of like solving a mystery. And then at the end of the unit, you could possibly play Clue, or Junior Clue, whichever one age group wise you would play with. And that's where they have to put their deductive reasoning skills, and you can talk about deductive reasoning and how detectives have to use their reasoning, and Clue would be something you could do at the end of your unit. A few of the authors that I just kind of want to highlight that have had several award-winning books and huge success in the world. The first one would be John Grisham, and he wrote the Theodore Boone Kid Lawyer book, which has been a fabulous read. I know it's on our book list, so I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but it's a fabulous read. And you could use his books from, I would say, 4th grade up. I probably wouldn't go any lower, and I haven't read much of his adult books, but I think those would be better for high school age students, so you could use his books for 4th grade up with his Theodore Boone series. Rebecca Steed, who wrote When You Reach Me, which we had to read, was another award-winning book. Her skills at writing just amaze me, astound me, and she just wrote a book called Liar and Spy, and I think it's up for an award, and I'm eager to get that book. I would probably use her books for upper elementary and middle school age kids. When You Reach Me was one of my favorite books ever, and it's got that mystery of the notes, and all the students that have read that book with me have enjoyed that book. They say it's one of their favorite books. And then you've got Louis C.K., who is just another wonderful author. He's written so many books, and one of my personal favorite books that I would put in my mystery genre is Holes, because you've got the mystery of trying to solve what happened to the lake, what happened to the history of this little area, and then you could also tie his book into the class with a movie and compare and contrast the movie with the book. Some important issues when considering a mystery book is, first, you got to think about what age you're choosing a mystery book for. I teach 5th and 6th grade, so I try to look for something that's a little bit more complex with the mystery that might take you in a different direction, give you a shock ending, kind of like When You Reach Me, where you kind of don't see it coming. I think that foreshadowing is something that most good mystery books have. They try to foreshadow what's going to happen. And one of the biggest things, as I mentioned earlier, is that mystery books have suspense, and that they build suspense by giving you these little clues, and these clues are like super scary type clues, like in Found, where you're sitting there going, you are one of the missing, you're like, what? So I think also that you need to try to include in a mystery unit one book that deals with a detective solving the crime, so they get the basis of what a mystery kind of falls under. As you know, the genre is not clear cut. They can fall under many different genres, so several books could fall under different categories, and you can tie them into any other genre later and say, hey, how come this book falls under this genre and this genre? Some big issues that you need to be careful of is when choosing these books is they normally deal with some type of crime, murder, something bad's going to happen, and it's hard to address this with younger kids. Like with the Graveyard Book, you've got an assassin breaking in and killing a whole family. That's a little bit harder for younger kids to understand. There are probably some very good picture mystery books. I just feel that with mystery, you've got to have time to build the suspense, to build the drama, and build the mystery, so the reader has time to try to solve the story. Now, I hope that you got a good idea about what my mystery unit is about. I'm going to take this moment now to read from my read aloud, the 39 Clues. I hope you enjoy this genre and you use this in your future classroom. It's family and history, Cousin Ingrid yelled. Is she crazy? Stubborn, Eisenhower Holt shouted. She called us stubborn. William, Alistair O's voice rose above the rest. Just a moment. There are people here I don't even recognize. People who may not even be members of the family. How do we know? If you are in this room, sir, Mr. McKintrey said, you are a Cahill. Whether your surname is Cahill or not doesn't matter. Everyone here has Cahill blood. Even you, Mr. McKintrey? Natalie Cabra asked in her silky British accent. The old lawyer flushed. That, miss, is besides the point. Now, if I might be allowed to finish, but what's this about sacrificing our inheritance? Aunt Beatrice complained. Where's the money? It's just like my sister come up with some foolishness. Madam, Mr. McKintrey said, you may certainly decline the challenge. If you do, you will receive what is under your chair. Immediately, 40 people felt around under their chairs. Eisenhower Holt was so anxious he picked up Reagan's chair with her still in it. Dan discovered an envelope under his, stuck on with tape. When he opened it, he found a green slip of paper with a bunch of numbers and the words Royal Bank of Scotland. Amy had one too. She did, and so did everybody else in the room. What you now hold is a bank voucher, Mr. McKintrey explained. It shall only be activated if and when you renounce your claim to the challenge. If you so choose, each of you may walk out of this room with $1 million and never have to think of Grace Cahill or her last wishes again. Or you may choose a clue, a single clue that will be your only inheritance. No money, no property, just a clue that might lead you to the most important treasure in the world and make you the most powerful person beyond belief. William's gray eyes seemed to settle on Dan particularly. Or it might kill you. $1 million or the clue? You have 5 minutes to decide.